And it's great to welcome him back, Mr. Ron Tolido, who is Executive Vice President and CTO, Insights and Data Global at Capgemini. He's the lead author of the yearly Technovision Trend publications and the editor-in-chief of the Data-Powered Innovation Review and host of the Data-Powered Innovation Jam podcast series. He's an executive lecturer at several business schools, a long-time participant and friend of the Open Group, and a gentleman I consider a personal friend. So please join us, Ron Tolido. Warm welcome for Ron, please.
Thank you, Steve.
Ooh, props.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, I have card decks with me.
Good.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
casino around the corner, so I just thought...
I won't take up any of your time.
Yeah, there is a casino. This is a top tip, by the way. It's just 2 meters around the corner. Anybody from Amsterdam here? Yeah, I'm awfully sorry about yesterday. It was the football people. Ajax yesterday lost the championship in a dreadful, pathetic way almost. But I'm from The Hague, so so I couldn't care less, frankly. But anyway, they lost, so it's very... everybody was happy anyway yesterday in Amsterdam, I believe, because the sun was shining. Everybody was outside, so not too bad. But you should know, if suddenly people start to cry, it's because their football team lost yesterday, the championship. Anyway, I'm Ron Tolido. I am from the Netherlands, but from The Hague. I'm also a big fan of Bruce Springsteen, ever since a few days. Just you are in Amsterdam, so I better get used to that, I guess. And the funny thing is, yes, it's a recurring thing, and there's a lot of recurring things. If you're a little bit, if you grow a little bit older in this business, or let's say you get more experience, you start to see certain recurring patterns. And there's a few things, like doing sometimes a presentation for the Open Group, for some unclear reason, still being invited to do it every now and then. And at the beginning of the year, relatively at the beginning of the year, it's nice to look at some of the trends that we're seeing, because we're architects, we're innovators. Innovation, big theme of this conference as well. And actually, we are in a very shaky world in which we see a lot of technology popping up, including AI, Steve. I might be back on that a little bit as well. But another recurring thing is that I've been working on Technovision, which is our yearly trend series, already now for ever since 2007. So that might be 18 years by now. And every year we get together. And by the way, Capgemini is of course a large IT company. We have 350,000 people nowadays worldwide. That doesn't make us the biggest, but we have a chateau, because it's a French company. So we have our lovely chateau over here, which is at Chantilly, north of Paris. And that's where we, meet in order to work on stuff like this. And we do our analysis of trends, and there's a whole team geared around it. And there are 37 different trends. Yes, that's why I have the card decks with me as well. I have one for you, Steve, of course, as a minimum. You should have one. But maybe if there are good questions, we have a few. They're actually quite rare. And they contain all of the 37 trends that we work with. Andrew just said I'm an architect, so I like models. That's true. I'm an architect as well, but I also like storytelling. And I think sometimes as architects, we tend to rely a lot on architectural frameworks. And let's say standards way of working and diagrams, if you like, and specifications. But in the end, if we want to convince people other than architects, which is a slightly different ballgame, we need to be storytellers. And Technovision, which I'm about to show you, is a tool particularly to create compelling digital stories that actually mobilizes people. And that's really what I want to bring across in a very short time frame. Anyway, Technovision itself, some of you already know it. As I said, I've been doing this before every now and then, but Technovision itself is part of a big program. Ever since 2007, it has been growing as a whole series of different things that we do. We do some external research, so we ask external organizations, what do you think are the big trends in 25 in this case? And by the way, all 5 of them that we got back had AI in them somehow. Ranging from cybersecurity worries in terms of we can use AI to break security, but we can also use it to weapon ourselves against all these new threats, all the way up to we're using AI more and more. It's energy consuming. Where do we get all of that energy? And maybe we should look at next generation nuclear technologies, for example, and everything in between, but all sort of driven in a way by AI. But we have radars, we have all sorts of different things. But actually what I want to show to you today is the full Monty of Technovision itself, which is the base document with these 37 trends that we now have on the card decks as well. Now, about it, it is the 17th edition. We missed one edition, if you can, 2017 should have been the 18th. There was 1 year in which we decided to crowdsource the whole thing, because that was social media and crowdsourcing was really coming up, and we're like, hey, we're just going to involve 100 people. And that was just like the 1 million penguins thing that they once did. Some of you may have heard of it. There was this idea of we have 1 million people writing on a new novel. And then in the end, it completely went downhill, and somebody started to replace all the roles of people in the novel by bananas, so everything was called a banana. And it wasn't really a compelling novel, that was the result. There was a fork, like in open source, so there was the banana fork, and there was the non-banana fork. But that's crowdsourcing, and we found if you involve too many people and too few leadership, then actually things don't really work. And I think that's still something we've learned both in open source, but also around open standards. So that's why it's the 17th edition. It contains all 37 trends, which is a lot, but we put them in so-called containers. Containers for infrastructure, application trends, data and AI trends. I'm in data and AI, so you might find some bias there in the minutes I've left. Process automation, user experience, collaboration technologies, all of that. So we put it neatly in containers. And then this is actually, the custodians of Technovision are our architects. We have quite a, I would say, quite a significant architects community within the company. Sort of proud of it, always been quite involved in the open group. I still like to think that TOGAF 9 would have never been there without, I think, the main inputs from many of our architects and architectural assets. But they're also the custodians of Technovision, because as I said, it's not only about having a framework and having a methodology and having best practices and reference architectures. It's also about the ability to tell a compelling story and get everybody involved in it. So that's why we have the architects as our custodians. Technovision is a wrong word, by the way, because it suggests it's only a vision, which is wrong. It's a very playful, actionable, day-to-day framework. I mean, the cards, for example, we use them on daily basis in our workshops across the world to actually get people unfrozen and then engage them in digital storytelling. Around a poker table, literally, they can play technology trends poker, which is, I can tell you, a very nice way of doing it, and certainly better than, here's a specification document, read it. Hopefully you agree with it. Usually not the case, by the way. Now, some of you are, quite a few of you are architects, so you know one thing. You can select a lot of new technologies and trends and work on solution and get the solution architectures and get it all together. But in the end, of course, the big question always is, what is the overarching theme of what you're trying to achieve? Is there something here, in good English, a leitmotif? Is there something, that binds it all together? And when we looked at trends every year again, we try to find out what would next year look like in terms of what's the overarching concepts. And mind you, we always do this already during the summer. So June is coming, and in June I will already be in Paris, and we start brainstorming about Technovision 26. Because, production time and everything, it takes quite a few months to get the whole thing together. So we need to, I don't know, have some sort of a crystal ball to look into and sort of try to guess what next year will be. And in the past few years, we had a few big themes. Of course, during COVID, which was in 21 and 22, we had, of course, we needed resilience and adaptivity and agility. We need to have a certain flow, whatever might hit us, and we didn't know because these were very uncertain times. So we had the Be Like Water and Being Like Water themes, 2 years consecutive, were about water-like ways of looking at technologies and at architecture and at solutioning. And then in 23, when we were a little bit out of that crisis, we were like, well, now we have scarce resources, and we need to be more sustainable in the choices that we make. We need to make fewer choices maybe, but a smarter portfolio of things that we want to do in our digital portfolio. So right sizing, but also choosing the right things and doing the right thing for the planet after that whole COVID crisis. So that made us in 23 make it right to technology, right to future. And then last year, of course, with the whole evolving AI technologies that we saw around us, we felt, okay, here's something very interesting happening. And we don't think AI should replace people at all, but we let ourselves augment by AI. So we had this theme last year of augment me. So it's in the end about us as humans, augment me. But we use the new technologies to make us do things or help us to do things that we deemed impossible before. So that was last year. And then it was June 24. I still remember it. It was a warm day, I think, that we started to brainstorm for the first time. And we started to look at 25 already, and there were some signs. And this is literally the list of that we came up with at the time. We were like, yeah, all the AI, but there's a lot of technological euphoria. And we all know, yin and yang, sooner or later, that euphoria will turn into something more pragmatic, and realism might kick in, and there's always a flip side to euphoria. We thought there might be some political shake-ups. Well, I rest my case, Your Honor. I think that's something. Yeah, I think that sort of happened. We had the feeling that given all sorts of shifts we saw on the agenda, that sustainability yet again, just like in COVID times, might yet again be under pressure as a top topic on the corporate agenda. Not something we like at all, but actually something we see around us happen currently as well. Also, of course, DEI, by the way, is obviously something that at certain corporate agendas currently is for obvious reasons under pressure. We saw a lot of geopolitical turmoil, obviously still going on. Not that difficult to predict that, but definitely happening, of course. As a result, of course, of all sorts of financial uncertainty and whimsicality. So that was something that sort of happened, I guess. We thought global trade between countries, that might be a wild card. The whole supply chain and the way that countries are working together, that might be sort of under pressure and might change over time. Not too bad either, I guess. And as a result, of course, also supply chains. Already in the COVID times, very much under pressure, might still yet again be a victim of all that uncertainty and all these very, unexpected movements. So in hindsight, I think it was not too bad. Of course, it turned out even crazier than this, but I mean, that's actually what 25 is, of course, nowadays. And this is what we have to deal with. There's a lot of uncertainty also in the technology area, because we have clearly inflated expectations of everything that we can do with technology, including AI. Then agentic AI, of course, nowadays. Used to be generative in 24 or so. And now, of course, it's agentic AI in 25. I would sort of guess that it might be AI in 26, but that's just my little prediction there. A lot of euphoria, but also reality kicking in. And we were thinking, of course, we're a French company, and we like storytelling. So we always look for a story to link up our theme. And then we saw this story about Léon Foucault, who was, of course, a famous French scientist. And he actually had this famous pendulum, his famous pendulum swing that he put in the Pantheon in Paris, 1852, I believe, was it 1851, whatever year more or less. In 1851, he had this famous experiment in which he put this pendulum, a huge pendulum, in the Pantheon. And he started to swing, of course, and it showed, first of all, of course, gravity. So if you go like this, you go exactly like this as well, and it keeps on going, right? If you put a bit energy there, and it keeps on going. But the other thing that he wanted to show us, and it happened, over the course of the hours, the pattern started to change. And it showed another oscillating pattern, and it showed, very simple, that the Earth was rotating. And he simply wanted to show that with his pendulum. And so all the flat earthers at the time probably were silenced there. Nowadays, of course, it's just fake news, I guess, that pendulum swing to some people. But we like that idea. And the pendulum swing means euphoria over there. There might be some very hard realism there. And a lot of other things that we see happening. We thought it was established there, and then suddenly it's entirely at a different side. And while we see that, also the Earth is rotating underneath us and is changing course. And so that is more or less, as architects, as as IT people, as digital strategists, that is a little bit the world that we're currently navigating. So we thought that was a nice one. And as I said, we're a French company, so we like to bring in every now and then French heroes. But hey, in the previous edition, we've done Bruce Lee as well. I mean, Be Like Water is, if you happen to know Bruce Lee, if you're old enough, and a guy probably, then you would know Bruce Lee. But that quote, Be Like Water, is actually from a Bruce Lee movie. So it's not that we're French chauvinists. Well, not every day at least. So that's we try to mix different cultural concepts here. Now, if you think about it, and this is to me a very important slide, because we brainstormed a little bit. What are then all of these different imbalances, these pendulum swing movements, these wild movements that we're currently seeing? And I guess everybody will recognize it. Of course, there's AI versus the human. So we saw that come back a lot. Autonomous systems versus human in the loop. Human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. There's a very interesting pendulum swing going on here. To what extent are we going to depend on that stuff versus to what extent do we reinvent ourselves as humans and what we actually are in that changing context. But also if we look at AI, there's a phenomenal power. We can achieve so lot with it. And then suddenly we see the cost of it. Not only in terms of money, which by the way, I can assure you, a lot of organizations have found out by now that the GPU power and AI is not for free, on the contrary, but also, of course, the sustainability cost of it. Although that might not be on the top of everybody's agenda nowadays, it's clearly something that we need to deal with. And it was one of the reasons why one of our 5 top tech trends actually said, well, maybe you should look at new ways of energy that are nowadays cleaner and more modular, like the small modular reactors. It's almost like container-like technology or microsatellite technology applied to nuclear energy. There's something interesting there. Itself, by the way, also, of course, a pendulum swing, because do we really want that? And what are the pros and cons of that? Working at home, my friends, COVID, we all got used to it, virtually working, using these type of tools, and then suddenly, a lot of organizations, including ourselves, by the way, say, no, don't do that. Thou shalt be at the offices. Oh, by the way, we downsized it to half of it what it used to be, but hey, still want to have everybody back, of course. There's real versus fake. A lot of fake information these days, we all know that, and real, and how are you going to balance that, and how easy is it nowadays to make a distinction between that's there and that's there, that's real, that's fake. And then, of course, being in the open group. The whole idea of being open, for example, in terms of cloud technologies, but also exchanging data, boundaryless information flow, this brilliant idea of we can all get better, also between countries or between companies if we all exchange it. And then, now, with a very different geopolitical and political, if you like, situation, suddenly the whole notion of something sovereign, for example, a sovereign cloud or a sovereign data sharing platform or anything else that is suddenly not that much public and open anymore, but suddenly we tend to like closed and sovereign. Maybe we use open technologies because we like them, but we use them in our little tiny country ourselves, right? And we like to keep it more sovereign. So these are just a few. I'm pretty sure that you'll see examples of it as well. And right now, my innovation approach often in workshops is simply, what if we do it 180 degrees different? What if we thought we were there? What if suddenly it would be there? What does it mean? Could we deal with it? Is that interesting? Does it give us new perspectives? Because it's actually what's happening. And then we think we understand that movement, and then underneath, the Earth is also rotating, and the world is rotating. The world of technology is very rapidly rotating, and with it, society as well. Now, Technovision itself has 37 trends, as I said. So I negotiated with Steve. I said, I have 37 trends. So I can easily do them in a keynote pitch. It would take me something like 5.5 hours, so the entire morning. And he said, that's interesting. How about 20 minutes? Okay, that's slightly different. So we have 37 different trends, as I said, in different containers, infrastructure, applications, data, process automation, collaboration, user experience, some design principles as well that many of you as architects will particularly appreciate. And they're all designed a little bit to tell stories and also to stay in the mind. So we do all sorts of references, if you can read them, to rock and pop and soul and movies and other cultural phenomena. Sometimes it depends a little bit on your background in culture and also how old you are to actually, actually appreciate one. I'm getting a little bit older or more experienced, as I would say, but recently I was in a speech like this, and I was talking about this trend in process automation, which we call whole lot of fusion. Whole lot of fusion. And so that's a good one. And a few people in the audience were like, yeah, a whole lot of fusion. And then there was this lady, I think she was, a Gen Z, very young, and was sitting there full of hope for a new world of technology. And she was looking at me like, whole lot of fusion. Why are people laughing? Why are these older guys? Why are these guys laughing? And I explained, well, I will explain to you. This is a song by the famous rock band AC/DC, and it's Whole Lotta Rosie. It's about a lady that he used to know, and that's the song, a whole lot of. And she said AC/DC. So I gave up, and I realized I'm getting too old for this. It's just, I thought it was timeless or something, but she really looked at me, AC/DC. I wouldn't. So there you go. I'm sorry for that. My favorite is still Ops AI Did It Again, but that's a slightly different musical style, I would say. But that's still one of my big favorites as well. But I only have time for one of these trends. Unfortunately, because 20 minutes, it's a very crude decision, but I had to comply with that. So my 5.5 hours is now brought back to one specific trend. And this is part of the thriving on data container, of course. I realize it's May 25, we want to discuss data, and particularly also AI, of course. And this is a container where we see a lot of that AI and data. By the way, I do this together with my dear friend Robert Engels, who has been one or twice at this conference as well, I think, and he's a mastermind behind quite a lot of the AI concepts that we currently see. By the way, there's another trend which is called data sharing is caring. Used to be called data sharing is caring. It was all about sharing data and using open standards and open technologies and platforms to facilitate that. And nowadays we would say, but take care. Data sharing is caring, but take care because sovereignty, privacy, security, the world is not that simple in terms of let's just open it up and miracles will happen. That's a very good idea, but we realize that now it's a slightly different context. But the one I wanted to mention is this one, also a very dear colleague, Wei Wei Feng. By the way, Wei Wei is fantastic. She's originally from China, but she already lives for 20 years somewhere in rural Sweden. So you get, and if she speaks English, so you get English from somebody who is originally from China and then is already for 20 years in Sweden, and it's the most fascinating accent I've ever heard. It's completely out of this world type of, absolutely fascinating. But she's also our resident AI goddess, and she's been working on a trend which she called AI meshed up. And that's our vision, I think, where AI will evolve towards in the forthcoming years. So from this idea of, well, I have a single LLM over here, I have a single agentic AI solution here, versus this idea of, well, actually, we have many different types of AI components working together in a very loose and loosely connected, decoupled way. And we want to be opportunistic and agile in combining all of these different smart AI components. Some of them might even be large language models and might be based on transformer architectures, but there might also be predictive AI, or even the type of AI that would be able to make a guaranteed split decision. I mean, if you're in a car, in an autonomous driving car, and you would have an LLM making up the next step to make if there's a collision in front of you, what to do, I don't think that's a good idea, that a language model would sort of try to do it for you. You want to have a fixed decision tree that will give you in a microsecond exactly the reaction that you're looking for. That's also artificial intelligence, but it's a very different form of intelligence. The LLM could only write maybe a poem about the collision, but that's not really what we're looking for, right? So this principle is of course based on something that many of us as architects like, the principles of mesh architecture, which of course was created a long time ago in physical networks, mesh networks, loosely coupled lightweight type of networks that could, in all sorts of different ways, connect to each other. And if they couldn't connect, well, bad luck, then we don't, and we do something else. That's mesh networks. Then, of course, we got the service mesh, which is well known in application architectures, in which we create microservices and we let them work together in a mesh, which is also not predefined, but very agile and adaptive. And recently, in the past few years, in the world of data, we've seen the notion of data mesh. So data products could be anywhere in the organization. They have their own interface. There's a marketplace. They have open standards, by the way, or closed standards if they're sovereign, but we have standards for these data products to define themselves and find them and use them in published and platform ways. And now I think we have what you could call, soon we'll have an AI mesh. And that AI mesh really will be more or less based on the same concepts. So this idea of, I have all sorts of different intelligences. Many of them might be artificial because it's digital, right? We created it ourselves. But we should realize that we won't solve world hunger with just a few LLMs and a nice conversation with a ChatGPT-like system. There's much more to it. And we believe that in the forthcoming years, the AI mesh will be an architectural feature, a way of looking at these things. And I think that in itself is a balance act as well, right? From this notion of, well, there's one solution and it solves us all, versus this idea of, well, that there might be a lot of variety over there. And within that variety, we might see a lot of trends popping up, things that suddenly become hot and then suddenly, DeepSeek, anybody nowadays? I mean, just 2 months ago, the world almost stopped rotating because DeepSeek. And then nowadays, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not that it sort of influences my daily life, I would say, as an IT professional. So this is all very good in terms of what the Open Group probably needs to look at is, if all of this wants to work together, open or sovereign in a mesh, you clearly need standards, right? And you need a standard also for the platform that is underneath. You want to be able to describe an AI component. Maybe if you want to call it an AI agent, by the way, that's fine. 25 word of the year, hey, AI agent. Next year, I would say, forget all of that. It might be just AI. But sooner or later, that might have an impact on even doing business, because we already start to call this the Autonomous Agent Alliance. That's another trend, by the way. Another dear colleague of mine from the US. But this idea of, well, if I have all of that intelligence, real intelligence, by the way, and virtual intelligence, artificial intelligence, and it could all be working together, and we might have business models there, talking about business architecture. Sonja just showed all of the different architectural models we have, including, of course, also approaches to business architecture. How will this influence the way we look at business architectures? I think if we see a business mesh as a result over there, sooner or later, it's extremely interesting. But of course, it's also interesting for the Open Group, because standards are far from, I mean, if we only look at agents currently, that's currently what we're seeing, right? So we have Anthropic, which itself is a spin-off of OpenAI. Then we have Google, then we have IBM, and we have many others, and they're all coming up with, yeah, that's a nice standard, and we need standards, but ours is better, actually. So we like standards as long as it's ours, right? And so that's something that is currently happening, and I don't think it will calm down anytime soon. So I believe there's some work to do over here, and if this is the future of what I think are new solutions, mesh, our AI mesh will look like in the forthcoming years, we realize the importance of standards, and now we simply see more and more and more and more. So it's almost a paradox, pendulum swing. We need a standard. Oh yeah, and a lot. You see, so there's a single standard, and then we have this, and how are we going to deal with that in the forthcoming years? I would like to conclude with a few things that we try to contribute to the whole thing, because I think in the end, if we want to succeed with AI components, we need to have confidence in what they deliver. And sometimes they deliver it, as I said, they need to deliver it in a microsecond. Otherwise, it might be probably good, like we often see with an LLM, write a poem for me, give me a summary of a Teams meeting. That's very nice and very useful. So last year, if you can remember, some of you were there in Edinburgh. We did introduce our Confidence in AI playbook, which came from some of our labs, the lab being driven by my colleague Robert Engels. And that had a whole series of different, let's say, dimensions to creating AI that you actually can have confidence in. And I can just tell you, and it's unfortunate, it just takes another week or two free that we can actually release it. But we have a new playbook, which is about deploying autonomous and agentic system. And again, the question is, how can you create something that you can have trust in, that you can have confidence in? And it's a complex world, but I do hope you agree with me. It's something that also needs an approach to standards and probably will very much affect the way we look at architectures and the way we create businesses and technology underneath. So thank you very much for bearing with me. One last advice I have for you: if you happen to go in Amsterdam, there's just one thing that will save your life. Never walk on bicycle lanes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Steve, I have one for you.
You're too kind. Thank you. Thank you very much. Look at that, my very own set.
You can take it to the casino.
I've seen these referred to on LinkedIn many times, but I've
you
never had.
And you just thought, I wish I had one.
Envious. Please take a seat of your choice. Yeah. And we do have.
I'm an aisle seat person, you know. So yeah.
That's right. Yes, you need to. So just a comment. We have people from 10 different countries here this week, which is great. And you're pretty much a native English speaker at this point. Ceaseless oscillation and financial whimsicality.
Yeah.
They're great.
I'm sorry about that.
They're great. I mean, it takes me back
Try to be a little bit creative in
right,
wording.
Yeah. I'm sure you were a lawyer in a former life or something.
I hope not, but...
So you... yeah, me too.
Sooner or later I will be paying for that in another life, yes.
So I had a question of my own, but I'll give way to the ones that have come in from the audience, but I can ask mine some other time. But
sure.
Let's see. This is a big question, but
maybe I can say just yes or no.
I can try and combine two. One is how is AI influencing architecture and vice versa, coupled with perhaps should the open group architects focus on interoperability to establish guidance for the AI mesh?
Well, the latter, I certainly hope so, but it's going to be tough because it's a young world. It has evolving technologies and a bit of evolving standards. And as I said, everybody tends to say, yeah, we need standards. It's so important, but it needs to be our standard because it's better than the rest, right. Or we were earlier, or whatever. So I think this would be hugely important for the open group in the end, if you could get a grip on that world. Which I don't know. There's some credibility here. In this room in terms of creating open standards. So you would hope so. And I think we need that for sure. Otherwise you can never create what we would call an AI mesh, right? It would be completely closed and you would not be able to take advantage of, let's say, AI agents or solutions anywhere else, for example, outside the company.
Right.
So I think that's important. The impact of architecture, well, I think I've tried to make the point is, what does this mean for us as architects in terms of the type of solutions? And the AI world we're designing for, but also, of course, our own craft of being an architect. Actually, our lawyers forbid me to say too much about that, so we actually have lawyers. But they actually would say, well, we're trying to work on our productivity ourselves as well, not only as architects, also software engineers, testers, data developers, everything. We of course realize that AI also will not only support us and augment us, but will change our craft as well. And I'm looking forward to an AI version of TOGAF sooner or later, in which we, by native, it assumes that you're AI augmented in what you do as an architect. Which, something to do over here in forthcoming years, I guess. Not done yet.
Watch this space for something interesting this week. We've actually got a little project been going underway. So
I would hope so.
Maybe something along those lines there.
Good.
Let's see. Common question. With all the references to AI, can you elaborate on the role of ethics oversight?
It's a pendulum swing. It's one of the most important ones we've seen currently, and you see, depending on where you are in the world and what your frame of mind is, what your cultural background maybe is, you understand ethics first and then AI. I would say maybe a bit of a European perspective in a way. to look at that. And it's a pendulum swing between, we're also discussing innovation here at the summit versus, yeah, but I want to be ethical and sustainable about it. And the thing is, it never stops. There's no equilibrium somewhere in which it all is in harmony. And of course, we also know of places in the world where you couldn't care less. At least from a Western European perspective about ethics.
Right.
And maybe that gives you a headway in terms of applying AI and use it for all sorts of different purposes. We all know, of course, but that's with all tools that mankind has invented. You use it for good purposes, probably, to augment yourself, and then the baddies get their hands on it as well. And that's still happening. So I see this as a very good example of that pendulum swing going on. Yes, we want to innovate with AI, but wait a minute, ethics, sustainability, where's the human in all of this? And I don't think it will come to a stop anytime soon. But that playbook that I mentioned, very much, maybe because of our roots, it focuses very much on the confidence and the ethical perspective of it, which we tend to sort of like more in the end, if it really comes to it. But that also is a pendulum swing, so it's not like we have an ideal place now where it's all perfectly balanced, because and then the Earth is also rotating underneath us, so just an illusion.
Well, one of our early moves at the Open Group was to try and get a group well, it naturally formed actually because everyone was interested in it. A group going on professional practice for those who are actually using these very powerful models and very powerful tools. So that's underway.
Definitely needed.
But needed, but early days. And I'm conscious of time.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Let's see. There's a question in here. I think I'll address. It's partly for me, but I'm interested in your perspective, because there's a couple of things that have come in about why is the Open Group anti-AI? Define
is that a trick question?
And how can you define standards when you don't embrace the use of it? Now that's to do with a policy that we introduced about controlled use of AI in our forums. If anyone has understood that to be no use, then let's have a conversation, because that isn't what the policy says. We're not anti-AI. We believe in using AI where it's valuable. We have some concerns that we need to work through about not putting everything automatically into AI, into certain machines that are then available, and everything is then available to the world depending on the machine you're using. So controlled AI use is absolutely fine and encouraged. So there's 2 or 3 questions on that, I suspect, from the same person. So if you have an issue about that, then I'm happy to talk to you about what our policy actually is. But I think I won't ask you to answer that, Ron, but I think the whole idea of resilience, last question for you, I'll ask. Resilience was something you stressed.
Yeah.
How on earth do you go about achieving resilience in such with the pendulum swing going, as you reminded us multiple times, the Earth turning down. Resilience is something that we've focused on at the Open Group over the years for our organization, and it's hard to feel a sense that you are resilient or secure when everything is changing all the time, the things you thought of. So there are tips in here, I imagine, is part of the answer.
Actually, yes. Actually, yes. There's a series of design principles. I haven't touched on them today, but it's not only about the what are the technology trends, but there's also a series of mindset principles. And one of them, you might say, that's what we call nowadays be like water, because that's the new design principle.
Right.
But actually what we're saying over there is you're just going to assume it will be broken. It's like with the supply chain. If you nowadays design a supply chain, maybe you want to design it assuming that it will be broken. It will go down, it will break. And then, you know, that's what you start. It's the same with you know, zero security or Jericho-style security as we used to have it in the past, in the good old days. And you simply assume it will be broken. Yeah. And then you start from there. And I would call that resilience. Maybe it's a negative mindset, but I think it's actually very positive
Yeah.
if you think about it. And that's what we need here, because we'll never know what's going to hit us next.
No, that's right. That's right. That's what makes it interesting, isn't it? But Ron, I could go on for the balance of that 5.5 hours you talked about. But,
I'm so disappointed.
We do have to move on. But Ron Tolido, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.